Royal Zookeeper Kralax fluttered nervously between the containment fields of the Grand Pavilion of Living Arts, his four arms adjusting and readjusting the power settings with practiced precision. The morning's triple suns cast prismatic reflections through the barrier fields, creating a dazzling display that would normally fill him with pride. Today, however, his attention was focused entirely on ensuring every safety protocol was operating at 200% capacity. By the three moons, what are the council members thinking, he muttered, mandibles clicking in agitation. Bringing a human to the royal collection. Next, they'll suggest we invite a pyroclastic dragon to a meditation session. His assistant, young Trillex, bounced excitedly on her gravity pads nearby. But Headkeeper, I heard humans are fascinating. They come from a world with gravity so strong it would crush our bones to powder, yet they dance and play like Neptunian butterflies. Kralax's upper eyes rolled while his lower pair remained fixed on the diagnostic readings. That's precisely what worries me, young one. A species that can survive such conditions. They're walking contradictions. And now we're expected to give one a tour of the most dangerous collection of beings in the known galaxy. The Grand Pavilion stretched before them, a marvel of bioarchitectural engineering that housed Queen Valthora's prestigious collection of the universe's most lethal creatures. Each habitat was a self-contained ecosystem, perfectly calibrated to maintain the comfort of its inhabitants while protecting visitors through advanced force field technology. Security Station 6, run another diagnostic on the Void Stalker containment field, Kralax commanded into his neural link. And someone please tell me why the crystalline razor beast's temperature is 0.3 degrees above optimal. A flurry of responses flooded his consciousness as his staff scrambled to satisfy their leader's perfectionist demands. The upcoming visit from human ambassador Linda Rivera had thrown the entire facility into a state of controlled chaos. Never in his 20 cycles as Headkeeper had Kralax felt such pressure to ensure everything was flawless. His third arm reached for a nutrition tablet as he reviewed the morning schedule. The human would arrive in precisely 2 hours, accompanied by the Queen herself, an honor that only amplified Kralax's anxiety. His fourth arm unconsciously stroked his worry stones, a habit from his larval stage that surfaced during times of stress. Trillex, recite the emergency protocols. Again. The young assistant's antennae drooped slightly. This would be the 7th recitation this morning, but she complied with appropriate enthusiasm. In the event of a containment breach, all visitors are to be immediately evacuated through the quantum tunnels. Security drones will deploy suppression fields while organic staff coordinate with the Royal Guard too. Kralax's attention drifted as he gazed at their latest acquisition, a juvenile thunderdrake from the storms of Jupiter. The creature's electrical discharges created mesmerizing patterns in its containment field, a display that had cost him 3 months of salary negotiations to acquire for the Queen's collection. Headkeeper, a urgent voice cut through his neural link. The human's transport has arrived early. They're passing through the outer security checkpoint now. All 4 of Kralax's arms froze in mid-motion. Early, humans didn't respect even the basic laws of scheduling? He quickly composed himself, straightening his ceremonial robe and adjusting his rank crystals. Trillex, final display check. Make sure the plasma serpents are fully visible, they're the Queen's favorites. And for the love of all things sacred, someone adjust that razor beast's temperature before. The grand entrance portal hummed to life, its iridescent surface rippling as it prepared to admit the most dangerous group of visitors the pavilion had ever hosted: Queen Valthora, her royal guard, and a representative of the notorious Death World species known as humanity. Kralax took a deep breath, forcing his chromatophores to display a professional shade of welcome blue. He'd supervised the hatching of Mercurian magma worms and hand-fed infant space krakens. Surely he could handle one small human. Right? The portal shimmered, and Kralax's professional composure shattered faster than quantum glass. Ambassador Linda Rivera didn't glide in with practiced grace like the dignitaries he was used to. She bounded through with the enthusiasm of a sugar-charged Martian jumping spider. Wow! The containment fields are gorgeous, she exclaimed, pressing her face close to the nearest barrier. The way you've layered the particle matrices, that's brilliant. What's the refresh rate on these bad boys? Queen Valthora's entrance was everything a royal arrival should be: dignified, measured, and accompanied by the appropriate amount of sparkle from her levitating crown. Her 6 eyes widened slightly at the sight of her human guest practically nose to nose with the force field containing a particularly grumpy Venusian acid spitter. Ambassador Rivera, the Queen's melodious voice, carried a hint of concern. Perhaps we should begin with the formal introductions. Oh, right. Sorry, Linda spun around, somehow managing to execute a perfect royal bow while simultaneously pointing at the creature behind her. But you've got to admit, Your Majesty, that's one impressive specimen. Look at those acid sacs, they're practically glowing. The assembled members of the royal court exchanged worried glances. Lord Pex Thor's ceremonial whiskers actually curled in distress. Nobody, absolutely nobody, interrupted Queen Val Thora's carefully choreographed welcoming protocols. But the Queen surprised them all by laughing, a sound like tinkling crystals. Your reputation for enthusiasm precedes you, Ambassador. May I present Kralax, our head keeper? He's been preparing for your visit with great dedication. Kralax stepped forward, trying to ignore how the human's eyes lit up at his title. Welcome to the Grand Pavilion, Ambassador. We've prepared a very specific route that will showcase our most impressive specimens from a safe and respectable distance. Is that a Plutonian shadow stalker? Linda was already moving toward another enclosure, her steps quick but surprisingly silent. The deadly predator inside, usually hidden in its quantum dark camouflage, actually emerged to track her movement. Ambassador Commander Briz Tal of the Royal Guard moved to intercept her, his protective instincts on high alert. That specimen is particularly dangerous, even through the barrier. Oh, she's not dangerous, Linda waved dismissively. She's just curious. Aren't you beautiful? You can smell me through the field, can't you? Different from your usual visitors, right? To everyone's astonishment, the shadow stalker terror of the Outer Rim colony sat down and tilted its head like a puzzled house cat. Queen Val Thora's antennae quivered with interest. You seem quite comfortable with predatory species, Ambassador. Well, you should see my cat back home. Now there's a real handful. Speaking of which, Linda turned to Kralax with an expression that made his carapace tingle with dread. I heard you recently acquired a juvenile thunder drake. I've got some experience with electrical megafauna. Mind if I take a peek? Before Kralax could formulate a polite refusal, Queen Val Thora's voice cut through his panic. An excellent suggestion. I've been eager to observe the drake's responses to new stimuli. The royal court's collective gasp was audible. This was not part of the carefully planned schedule. This was not protocol. This was fantastic. Linda was already heading in the right direction, as if she'd memorized the pavilion's layout. You know, on Earth we've got these things called electric eels. Nowhere near as powerful, of course, but the principle's similar. The real trick is in the handling technique. Kralax felt his worry stones crumble to dust in his grip. Somewhere in the background he heard Trillex whisper excitedly, I told you humans were fascinating. Fascinating wasn't quite the word he would have chosen. Terrifying felt more appropriate, and they hadn't even reached the dangerous exhibits yet. The warning sirens shattered the air just as Linda was explaining why Earth's honey badgers would make adorable pets. Compared to the pavilion's collection, red emergency lights pulsed through the chamber as Kralax's neural link exploded with panic reports. Code Black. Code Black. Shadowmancer containment breach in Section 7. The royal court erupted into chaos. Lord Pex Thor fainted dead away, his ceremonial whiskers twisting into stress-induced knots. 3 council members tried to squeeze through the emergency exit simultaneously, creating a bottleneck of expensive robes and flailing limbs. Silence. Queen Val Thora's command cut through the panic like a laser. Commander Briz Tal, report. The security chief's scales had paled to a sickly green. The Shadowmancer has somehow overridden its neural suppressor. It's currently moving through the maintenance tunnels beneath us. All containment teams are mobilizing, but... A bone-chilling screech echoed through the pavilion, followed by the distinct sound of rending metal. But what the Queen demanded? But we've never actually had to catch one before, Commander Briz Tal admitted. The species was considered extinct until 3 months ago. This specimen is the only one in captivity, and the historical records on their capabilities are incomplete. Another screech, closer this time. The Thunder Drake, previously peacefully observing Linda, began crackling with agitated energy. Evacuate all non-essential personnel, Kralax ordered through his neural link. Activate secondary containment barriers. Release the Hunter-Seeker drones. Oh no, Linda's voice carried an odd note of excitement. Don't use drones. Shadowmancers eat energy signatures for breakfast. Literally. You'll just make it stronger. Every head turned to stare at the human. And you know this how Commander Briztal asked suspiciously. I wrote my xenobiology thesis on theoretical approaches to extinct apex predators. The Shadowmancer was my favorite case study. Did you know they're not actually shadow creatures? They manipulate localized gravity fields to create the appearance of melting into darkness. Fascinating stuff. A massive crash from below made the floor vibrate. Security feeds showed a trail of destruction leading toward the main chamber. The containment teams are in position, Briztal reported. We have stun nets, gravity traps, and... That won't work either, Linda interrupted, already removing her ceremonial jacket. Your tech's too advanced. Too many energy signatures. You need something more primitive. Queen Valthora's antennae twitched. What are you suggesting, Ambassador? Well, Linda cracked her knuckles with a grin that made Kralax's exoskeleton crawl. Back home, when we need to subdue a large predator, sometimes the old ways work best. A bit of skill, a lot of patience, and good old-fashioned physical presence. You cannot be suggesting. Kralax's voice rose to a near squeak. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm offering to help catch your escaped killer Shadowcat before it eats something expensive, like Lord Peck's Thor over there. The unconscious noble stirred briefly at the mention of his name. Absolutely not. Commander Briztal's protective scales flared. Your Majesty, I must protest. Allowing an alien diplomat to engage with a Grade 9 predator would violate at least 17 interstellar safety protocols. Another crash, followed by the distinctive sound of hunter-seeker drones being crunched like snacks. The Shadowmancer's roar now carried distinct notes of satisfaction. 19 protocols, Kralax corrected automatically. 20 if you count the revised xenobiological engagement guidelines from last week's update. Linda was already doing stretches. Look, that beauty down there is scared and confused. All your fancy tech is just making things worse. Sometimes you need a more personal touch. And if you fail, the Queen asked quietly. Linda's smile was pure predator. Then you'll have excellent data for updating those extinction records. But I won't fail. Trust me, compared to my mother-in-law's cat, this will be a piece of cake. Before anyone could raise further objections, Linda vaulted over the safety railing into the lower level. Her landing was silent, practiced movements more reminiscent of the deadly creatures in Kralax's collection than a diplomatic official. Ambassador Commander Briztal rushed to the railing. Return to safety immediately. That's an order. Sorry, Linda's voice echoed back. Diplomatic immunity. Besides, I think I hear our friend coming to say hello. The security feeds showed Linda standing calmly in the center of the maintenance area, completely exposed. The shadows around her began to twist unnaturally as something large, dark, and decidedly hungry emerged from a gravity-defying corner. Fascinating young Trill X bounced on her gravity pads. Do all humans have death wishes, or is Ambassador Rivera special? Both Kralax groaned, watching as the galaxy's deadliest recently undiscovered predator stalked toward the apparently suicidal human. Definitely both. The Shadowmancer emerged fully into the maintenance area's dim light, and the observing aliens finally understood why ancient civilizations had nightmares about living shadows. Its body seemed to bend reality, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. 6 legs moved with liquid grace, each tipped with claws that could shred battleship armor. But most terrifying were its eyes, pools of swirling purple energy that sparked with ancient intelligence and very modern hunger. Well, aren't you gorgeous? Linda's voice carried clearly through the security feeds. Look at that gravity manipulation. The way you bend light around your fur is simply incredible. The beast was easily 4 times her size. Its shoulders alone stood taller than a Nexian transport vehicle. The security feeds showed its neural inhibitor collar dangling uselessly from one massive fang. Ambassador Commander Briztal's voice shook slightly. Please remain still. Our backup containment team is almost in position. Call them off, Linda said firmly, never taking her eyes off the approaching predator. You'll just make our friend here nervous. Nobody likes an audience when they're feeling out of sorts. The Shadowmancer's head lowered, its gravity warping field making the air ripple around it. A low growl resonated at a frequency that made Kralax's teeth ache. Oh, really? Linda replied to the growl, as if she were chatting with a colleague over coffee. That's quite impressive. But you know what's also impressive? In one fluid motion that made several royal guards faint, Linda dropped and rolled as the Shadowmancer pounced. Its massive form sailed over her, gravity field disrupted by the unexpected dodge. The creature landed with surprising grace, but its predatory confidence had been shaken. The fact that you telegraphed that pounce like a rookie, Linda laughed, already back on her feet. Come on, beautiful. You're better than that. Show me what you've got. By the 3 moons, Queen Valthora breathed, all 6 eyes wide with fascination. She's playing with it. Not playing, Trillex bounced excitedly. Training. Look at her footwork. Indeed, Linda was moving in a complex pattern, never staying still long enough for the Shadowmancer to focus its gravity fields. Each time the creature tried to bend space around her, she was already elsewhere. The maintenance area became a dance floor for the strangest duet the pavilion had ever witnessed. Your left haunch is dropping before you pounce, Linda called out, ducking under a swipe that could have decapitated her. That's why you keep overshooting. Here, watch. To everyone's horror, she demonstrated a perfect pouncing posture. The Shadowmancer actually paused, head tilted in apparent confusion. See? Center of gravity stays hidden until the last moment. Like this. Linda launched herself forward in a move that somehow combined gymnastics, martial arts, and pure insanity. She rolled under the Shadowmancer's guard and popped up by its flank, giving one of its secondary shoulders a friendly pat. The creature spun with blinding speed, but instead of attacking, it tried to mirror her movement. Its attempt was clumsy, gravity fields flickering as it attempted to adapt its hunting style. Good try, Linda praised. But you're still thinking in 3 dimensions. You've got gravity manipulation. Use it. Is she critiquing the apex predator's hunting technique? Lord Pexthor had regained consciousness just in time to witness this madness. Giving it pointers, Commander Briztal confirmed weakly. The human is giving hunting advice to a Shadowmancer. The next 10 minutes defied every known law of nature, probability, and common sense. The maintenance area became an impromptu training ground as Linda and the Shadowmancer engaged in what could only be described as a deadly game of tag. The creature's initially aggressive moves gradually transformed into something more playful, its gravity fields now used for agility rather than attack. Your Majesty, Kral Axe found his voice at last. The Shadowmancer's aggression readings are dropping. Its neural patterns are shifting to 2. Learning mode. Linda finished for him, now casually scratching behind one of the creature's gravity-sensing organs. The Shadowmancer had rolled onto its back, all 6 legs splayed in a distinctly unthreatening manner. They're social hunters, you know. All that aggressive behavior was just stress from isolation. Poor baby just needed someone to play with. The massive predator made a sound that was disturbingly close to a purr. Its gravity field now gently lifted Linda a few inches off the ground before setting her down, like a child showing off a new trick. See? Who's a good interdimensional apex predator? You are. Yes, you are. Queen Valthora turned to Commander Briztal. Did the human ambassador just win the loyalty of a Shadowmancer by treating it like a pet? No, Your Majesty, Briztal replied faintly. The human ambassador just taught a Shadowmancer new hunting techniques, demonstrated superior mobility in a 3-dimensional combat scenario, and then won its loyalty by treating it like a pet. Ah, the Queen's antennae quivered thoughtfully. Commander. Yes, Your Majesty. Revise all security protocols regarding human visitors. Mark them as both extremely dangerous and exceptionally valuable allies. Already done, Your Majesty. I took the liberty of adding a new classification, paradoxically terrifying friend. From below, Linda's voice carried up, hey, who wants to see this big sweetheart do tricks? Watch this, we're working on sit using localized gravity wells. Kral Axe promptly fainted, all 4 arms clutching his shattered worry stones. The last thing he heard was Trill X's delighted voice, can we keep the human? Please, and that's why you always check for gravity well resonance when giving belly rubs. Linda explained, leading a now perfectly docile Shadowmancer back to its enclosure. The creature padded along beside her like an oversized puppy, occasionally warping small patches of reality just to make her laugh. Queen Valthora watched from her hovering throne, mandibles twitching in what her court recognized as barely contained amusement. Ambassador Rivera, in 300 cycles of diplomatic relations, I don't believe anyone has ever rendered my entire security force obsolete with. What did you call it? The power of friendship, Linda grinned, giving the Shadowmancer one final pat before stepping back. The creature entered its enclosure voluntarily, settling down with a contented rumble that only slightly distorted the local space-time continuum. Preposterous, Lord Pexthor muttered, still dabbing his forehead with a ceremonial stress cloth. Completely preposterous. Next, she'll tell us humans tame their own world's apex predators for companionship. Oh sure, Linda nodded enthusiastically. We call them dogs. Want to see pictures? My sister has this adorable wolf hybrid named Banana. Perhaps Queen Valthora interrupted smoothly. We should adjourn to the royal reception chamber. I believe this event calls for something stronger than traditional meditation tea. 20 minutes later, surrounded by the reception chamber's floating crystal gardens, the Queen raised a glass of triple distilled starlight. To new understanding, she proclaimed. And better containment systems, Kralax added weakly from his recovery cushion. Actually, Linda set down her glass. I've been meaning to talk about that. Your containment technology is amazing, but you're approaching these beings all wrong. They're not just specimens to be displayed. They're intelligent creatures with social needs. Social needs, Commander. Briztal's protective scales flared. The Shadowmancer has destroyed 3 battle cruisers. Because it was lonely. Look at your records. Every incident happened during the night cycle when activity in the pavilion was lowest. It's like having a super-powered toddler. They act out when they're bored. Queen Valthora's antennae lifted in sudden understanding. Like humans. The chamber went silent. I beg your pardon, Linda blinked. My scientists have spent cycles studying humanity's survival on your death world, trying to understand how you endure such harsh conditions. We assumed it was superior physical adaptation or advanced technological intervention. The Queen's 6 eyes sparkled. But it's simpler than that, isn't it? You survive because you refuse to acknowledge that anything is truly untamable. Well, I wouldn't say refuse, Linda scratched her head. We just figure everything's worth trying to understand. Even the scary stuff. Especially the scary stuff. You befriend predators, harness natural disasters, and turn survival scenarios into recreational activities, Queen Valthora continued. When faced with a deadly creature, your first instinct is to teach it tricks. And give it a silly name, Linda added helpfully. I was thinking of calling him Shadow Floof. Kralax made a strangled noise from his cushion. Don't worry, Linda assured him. I'll help you redesign the enrichment programs for all your exhibits. The Thunder Drake would love some weather simulation games, and I have great ideas for the Plasma Serpent's exercise routine. Your Majesty, Commander Briztal stepped forward. I believe I understand now why the Council insisted on this cultural exchange. Humans aren't just surviving their death world. They're thriving on challenge itself, the Queen finished. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Every predator is a potential friend. Every deadly situation is, what was your phrase, Ambassador? A piece of cake, Linda supplied cheerfully. Speaking of which, you should try some actual cake sometime. I know this great place on Earth that makes these incredible gravity-defying desserts. Ambassador Queen Valthora's voice carried new warmth. I believe this is the beginning of a very interesting partnership, though perhaps we should start with something less ambitious than cake. Oh sure. How about we work on Shadow Floof's agility training? I noticed your maintenance tunnels would make an amazing obstacle course. The collective groan from the royal court was interrupted by young Trillex bouncing in excitedly. Headkeeper. The Thunder Drake is making the same play motions it saw the Shadowmancer perform. And the Plasma Serpents are trying to copy them too. Kralax looked at his half-empty glass of starlight. Your Majesty, I request permission to either retire immediately or double my salary. Denied. The Queen's mandibles clicked in amusement. I believe your job just became far more interesting. Ambassador Rivera, how do you feel about a permanent advisory position in interspecies enrichment? Linda's eyes lit up with the same enthusiasm that had preceded the Shadowmancer incident. Can I start with the Void Stalkers? I have some theories about their quantum tunneling behavior. The sound of Kralax fainting again was almost lost beneath the Queen's crystalline laughter. 3 months after the infamous Shadow Floof incident, as it was now officially recorded in royal archives, the Grand Pavilion of Living Arts had undergone some interesting changes. The most notable was the new sign at the entrance warning human-inspired enrichment programs in progress. Expect unexpected joy. Kralax stood at his observation post, all forearms clutching fresh worry stones as he watched Linda Rivera's latest improvement to the facility. The Void Stalkers were playing quantum fetch with the plasma serpents while the Thunder Drake acted as referee, using small lightning bolts to keep score. Status report Queen Valthora requested, materializing beside him in a shower of royal sparkles. The good news or the concerning news, Your Majesty? Both, naturally. The good news is that aggressive incidents are down 98%. The concerning news is that our training budget has tripled due to what Ambassador Rivera calls necessary recreational equipment. Through the containment field, Shadow Floof demonstrated a perfect gravity-assisted backflip for a group of admiring juvenile predators. The former terror of the Outer Rim colonies had become something of a mentor figure to the pavilion's younger residents. Money well spent, the Queen declared. The Galactic Council is particularly impressed with our new approach to interspecies relations. They're calling it the Rivera Protocol. You mean the practice of treating every deadly creature like an oversized house pet? Commander Briztal approached, his protective scales now permanently tinted with what he called human readiness coloring. I prefer to call it the "who's a good boy" method. Linda's voice rang out as she descended from the ceiling in a harness of her own design. Much more marketable. Oh, and speaking of marketing, wait until you see the plushies. The what? Kralax asked weakly. Linda produced a soft toy from her pocket. It was an adorable stuffed version of a Shadowmancer, complete with gravity distortion effects achieved through clever use of holographic fabric. Merchandising, she announced proudly. All proceeds go to the Apex Predator Enrichment Fund. We're calling the toy line Perfectly Safe Pals. We've received pre-orders from 17 star systems, Queen Valthora added. Apparently there's a large market for cuddly versions of the galaxy's deadliest creatures. The humans call it ironic appeal. Speaking of appeal, Linda gestured excitedly at her datapad. Wait until you see the proposals for the new Deathworld petting zoo concept. Kralax swayed slightly. Petting. Zoo. Totally safe, I promise. We'll start small, just some earth kittens, a couple of honey badgers, maybe a friendly grizzly bear. The sound of Kralax's worry stones crumbling was drowned out by the enthusiastic cheering of young Trillex, who had recently been promoted to Assistant Human Activities Coordinator. Oh, and the best news, Linda bounced on her toes. Remember that diplomatic summit next month? Guess who's being featured as the keynote speakers? Through the containment field, Shadow Floof chose that moment to demonstrate a new trick, creating a heart shape with his gravity manipulation field. You don't mean Commander Briztal's scales shifted to a shade of disbelief? Yep. Shadow Floof and I are doing a presentation on alternative approaches to interspecies communication. We've been practicing our routine for weeks. Queen Valthora's antennae quivered with delight. The same summit where the Rigelian Emperor once fainted at the sight of a mild spatial anomaly. That's the one. Don't worry, we'll start gentle. Just a few gravity tricks, maybe some basic quantum tunneling exercises. In the background, Trillex was already taking bets on how many diplomatic officials would faint. The current odds favored at least 60% of the audience. You know, Linda mused, watching as Shadow Floof helped a young Void Stalker master its first quantum pounce. When I took this ambassador position, I never expected to become a professional space monster friendship coach. And we never expected humans to revolutionize our entire approach to xenobiology, Queen Valthora replied. Though perhaps we should have. Any species that names its most advanced predator control unit K9 clearly has a unique perspective on dangerous creatures. Oh. That reminds me, the Earth delegation next week? They're bringing puppies. Kralax finally found his voice. Define puppies. Baby wolves, basically. But these ones, no tricks. And they love to cuddle. The headkeeper looked at his empty hands, mourning his last set of worry stones. Your Majesty, about that retirement request. Still denied. Queen Valthora's mandibles clicked in amusement. But I did approve your request for a vacation. Ambassador Rivera suggested something called an African safari. Apparently it's very relaxing. As Kralax slumped in resignation, Linda's datapad chimed. Ooh, exciting news. The Galactic Zoo Association just approved our proposal for the first ever interstellar predator talent show. Shadow Floof, buddy, we've got work to do. The Shadowmancer responded with a gravity wave that formed a distinct thumbs-up shape, proving once, and for all that in the grand cosmic scheme of things, perhaps humans weren't the strangest species after all. They were just the ones crazy enough to make friends with the strange ones.